Hello, hello. How are you, Lady Faye? How you doing?
I am just very blessed, excited
Oh,
about what we're going to say tonight that will potentially help some other business owners.
I am beyond ecstatic to have you here, not as a guest, but we'll dip into that just a little more in just a moment. Want to say welcome to you. Welcome to our guest. You are tuned in and listening to a segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time. I am your host, Nikki Roach, and always have to give a shout out and thank you to those who believe in us and our sponsors, which is Sparkman Pathway to Careers, Lady Marilyn Parker, and also the team over at KSTL Jubilee 690 AM who constantly are working with me and the team to make this platform better and to reach more people in amazing places doing amazing things. Also want to thank Covenant Exchange LLC as well. Today, though, is a special day. Why? Because it is, yes, another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time, but it is also a takeover. It's a takeover with Lady Fay Fleming, who is, those of you, you may have remembered her. We had her on in the past, and she just came with so much, so much, so much. I cannot say that enough. Tools. I'm talking immediate tools to apply, especially to those of us who have small businesses, who are seeking out or beginning in that entrepreneurial space, but also businesses, corporations, in regards to how to even leverage the different tools and strategies that she has about maximizing change. Had a chance to meet her a couple years ago now, and immediately upon meeting Fay Fleming, I was like, okay, this sister I need to know. First, she walked in the room commanding all attention, if I must say. And then when she speaks, you listen, the people listen. And tonight, I want you to pay attention and listen because she's always, again, equipped. She is the founder of business oh shoot business performance company business performing company. And I was going to jump ahead and give you, she's all about big change and less struggle but more success. She is preparing also to position herself to come before you in the audience. So what better way to go ahead and hand over this platform to her to begin her journey? That's what we do. This platform is for giving us the resources that we need. Lady Faye, when we talk about big change, we are not yet clear from what has been unexpected year of pause in so many different ways, change in so many different ways. Shine some light from your perspective as a mentor, as a facilitator, as a strategic planner, from all those different hats. How would you approach this topic?
Well, first of all, before I approach the topic, thank you very much for continuing to do this show, continuing to have information freely available across Instagram, Facebook, the radio show. There's no place you can go and not be able to get this information. So thank you for what you do, for the passion that you have, which then forges a way for the rest of us to share our talent.
Wonderful.
And really, this is like one of these things that if I could get them to stop sending mortgage bills to my house, I would do this for free,
I
right? I
know, right?
would, absolutely would. I absolutely would. So going back to the topic, maximizing change. First of all, lots of people really want to talk about COVID-19, which is a big thing, right? We got global pandemic, we got global protests, we've got political uprising, we got people taking over the Capitol, we got stuff we've never seen before. However, I want to encourage everyone that yes, this is big, but in the overview at 50,000 feet, this is just a big change. And I dare say that people who lived through the Depression experienced it as a big life shaking change, right?
Mhm.
Each generation has something.
Yeah.
So what I want to encourage everyone to do is to join me in thinking about this, is that it is not about getting back to normal. For me, it is about getting to the next normal. And rather than sitting back, I mean, maybe this has worked for some people. The cavalry never comes for me. So I'm all about, as opposed to waiting for the government, waiting for big corporations, waiting for the local community to come and buy our products and services, no matter what, it is about assuming the attitude of, we're not waiting for things to get back to normal. We're not even waiting for the next normal. We are creating, actively creating the next normal. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to talk about tonight. How do we maximize a big change? Because if we just talk about this as COVID-19, the ancillary things that we'll talk about, it will drive the conversation just about what's happening today. Where I think the bigger opportunity is to say, how do I maximize change, period, no matter what the change is? Because I dare say that COVID-19 has hit people disproportionately. If you're in the top 1% of earners, you know, you just got on your charter plane and went to your favorite island.
Right. Or
Right.
brought the world to yourself, right?
Yeah. You just hired the circus to come to your estate. And you had balloons and monkeys and circus people. And for other people, it was about the way we got chicken nuggets was because someone had no choice but to stand shoulder to shoulder, unvaccinated, because they were deemed essential workers. It is about nurses and doctors knowing that the next day they could be the patient who stood shoulder to shoulder to help get us through this. It's about private corporations and manufacturing plants that stop producing product to flip into producing ventilators and masks and
Yes.
right. So if we just talk about this as COVID-19, those are the kinds of conversations we'll have, which are important conversations. But what I'm really about is let's go to the next level up, level two. And that's about seeing this as this is our opportunity to, in our mind, shift to, lean in, pivot, whatever your word is. This is just a big change. And this is our opportunity to learn how to identify the change, to learn how to flow with the change, and to hopefully, as business people, be just a little bit ahead of that gap between what's selling, what's not selling, what businesses will never be seen again, and where's the new opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I know one thing you mentioned, which is something in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and now belonging space that we talk about is the generations, and you touched on that. And some may know because there's more talk about it now. The five generations working, and I love the language you use, shoulder to shoulder,
Yes.
in across all industries, in corporate, in nonprofit, in retail. We are working in that traditionalist, that older generation, they are not retiring as fast as anticipated. And so when you talk about change, that's a whole nother element of embracing this change and how we each, I love how you also mentioned um, COVID is looked upon or not even considered in the same manner as another person depending on their generation,
Right.
which is another level of change that business owners, corporation leaders, um, just as individuals showing up to wherever it is that we generate income and to manage our living. Um, that's a whole nother space of change. But I love how you said, like, how do we maximize that?
Right. Because the typical human response to change is many people run from change, many people hide, right? Keep your head down, just keep your head down, keep working, keep servicing the same customers, and hopefully they will stay. Or if you're a business professional, it's keep your head down, don't upset anybody, don't make any noise, and the change will, or some people simply fight change.
Yeah.
And all of those are valid responses, but what point do you have more control and impact over your environment? And I would argue that it's with none of those responses, that the truer response that gives you more impact and more influence over what happens to you, your career, your business, your community, is to say, let me be very clear about what the change is and be predictive about how this change might, if you're a community organizer, impact my community, right? Or if you're a business professional and you work at Amazon, thumbs up. Your impact is going to be really good. However, if you work at a local boutique shop that's dependent on walk by traffic, you're going to get a big impact too. Not so much thumbs up. One of the really interesting things I've heard is a industry expert on generational differences, Dr. B. Bourne, who's with Purdue Global, really talks about how all these different generations in the workplace can either be seen as a grand scheme of opportunity or as a diversion that people are now trying to make the traditionalists or the millennials or the Generation Z or any of the alphabet to conform to something called company culture, right? And either approach you could choose. But again, how do we not just live through change, not just get through change? How do we really maximize it? Because the change is going to happen, right?
And to remain relevant and competitive in a crowded world. We used to
Yeah.
say crowded industry, but the world is just crowded with ideas and um, ideas, products, services. And it's like, how do you position yourself? I'm thinking to remain relevant, to be a company or a provider of choice. I see that leaning into this change that you're talking about. So, how do you, galvanize and bring these generations together and cause them to not be intimidated or uncomfortable, actually make them uncomfortable, but be comfortable being uncomfortable so that it becomes a win-win for us all in identifying how we remain relevant, how do we stand out? Because I mean, it's no different. I use the example of going to a department store and you walk in and you're bombarded by fragrance. There's fragrances. I mean, you can look for it down the hall and you see fragrances just for women. And you're going in, but how do you single in and narrow down to, you have one option that you're going to buy today? And you go through, and usually somebody's going to approach you. Have you had this? Have you had that? Have you? And then before you know it, you can't smell anything. But one stood out. So that's the same sauce. Like, what's our sauce? And I think the change is that sauce. Like, but being very intentional and strategic about it.
I agree. And one of the foundational places I think that starts to have a good strategy on that is to first be clear on your own brand, on your own flavor, right? Um, there's a million consulting companies like ours that consult with clients all across the United States, right? On any given day, you can buy a book, a CD, you can download you on leadership. But what we found when we did the research is there's very little about training people at the starting point of leadership. And to that end, we've created a course, a day-long course that is entitled uh, Leadership One-on-One. First, lead yourself, right?
Yes.
How can you clearly lead anyone else if you've not gotten clear on yourself? So the first way to be substantively different in a way that adds value, because difference for the sake of difference, I dare say if I paint that one side of my head orange and the other side red, that makes me different.
Yeah.
But to be different in a way that provides not only value that is sustainable in the long run, which is how you eat market share, but is relevant to the people that you're targeting. And here's another thing, it's not about, in my book, being um, company or a brand that people like that attracts customers, prospects, into your sales funnel. And it's not even about people being satisfied. We want people to prefer us because when you prefer a brand, I'm telling you, my favorite example is Starbucks coffee. You cannot get a true Starbucks drinker, to get a big gulp, stop at any place other than Starbucks. We've
And
done research with salespeople, and they plot out the route of how they're going to do their sales calls based upon where the Starbucks is.
even traveling.
Yes.
I mean, great example. And what's crazy is that I have a group that I connect with on a regular basis, and there are several of them who are Starbucks, and so the power of influence of such dedication shows up every time we get together, because guess what? Somebody's either wanting some dessert, or just since you're going there, or they're like, we knew that you would want fill in the blank.
Right.
So that influence, because they now have these ambassadors all over the world who's like, drink the juice, literally,
Right.
like, so yeah, I think I love that. Preferred. You want to be preferred.
I want to be preferred. And the wonderful part of this, the magic of the secret sauce is that it's attainable no matter what niche you're in, right? If you're a dry cleaner, you want to be so good that people pass 10 dry cleaners to get to you. You want people to decide to wear a different suit because they can't get to your dry cleaners, right?
So
If you're a pool guy, you want people to, I'm just not going to swim in the pool until Tom gets here because that's our pool guy.
so there's some risk that comes with this,
Okay.
taking to be preferred. But then there's also in the mindset of, and I say risk because what if what I'm offering is not the best? And individuals are saying, I'm gonna pull back. And what do you say to, it's not about having the best product and or service. What's something else that they can rise to the occasion to meet that need?
Then it's about having your suspect that you convert to a prospect, that you then convert into a customer, that you then give an experience that they believe is the best, and they go out and advocate for you, right? So it's not about being the best, it's about being the best in the share of mind of the target audience, the niche that you're going after. Why is your coffee the best? Because I think it is. Does that really make it the best in the world? But guess what? You're not trying to serve coffee to every single person in the world, right? Right?
I think that's a good lesson for no matter how size the company is, solopreneur all the way to major, international footprint of a corporation. It's the experience. You said the key word, because
Absolutely.
when I think about brand loyalty in my household, there are a number of things I can think off the top, and it's about the experience. And some things I can go to buy bulk somewhere, but I prefer to go to Fay's boutique because why? She's like, "Hey, Nikki, how you doing?" That's already a connection. There's already a sense of belonging, which is another thing that a lot of organizations are learning. It's not just an internal thing, but it's also an external thing. How do I belong? And I think that Starbucks is truly clinched in on that, and to where people are like, I want to be a part of that. The experience has taken it just to a whole nother, like, it could be muddy water, give me some. I want a grande of muddy water.
And as we follow along this train of thought, here's the tip for free. Okay, this is worth remembering. Here is the tip for free. It's not only about being in the share of mind of your target audience or niche, it is about honing that experience so much that you intentionally reorganize your firm and your efforts and your company around always nailing that experience. Think about this. I can buy the same suit, I dare say, from Neiman Marcus as I can Nordstrom's. Guess which one I'm going to? I'm going to Nordstrom's because when I walk into Nordstrom's, whether I have $10 or $1,010,
Mhm.
I am treated the same way. I'm going in for the experience. And Nordstrom's understands that. And so what they give you is they're selling a retail experience that happens to come with some clothing and some tennis shoes and some jewelry and some same thing about Starbucks. People who think Starbucks is in the coffee business missed it.
Yeah.
Starbucks wants to be your third place. After home and work, they want you to be at Starbucks. So their intentionality around what their true mission is, they don't think that they're in the coffee bean business. They're about making you see, feel, experience, and crave to be at Starbucks as your third place.
And that comes through physical location, walking through, walking in the mood and the atmosphere they set. Now that you said this, I'm thinking about the experience because I have been going because I passed one, and then that group that it kind of like wooed me in. The music they play, it reminds me of
Yes.
being at home, in like in the family room. The smell even when you go in, it's so homey. The dimming of the lights, all of that.
And in the midst of that, what do they call people who make the coffee? They don't say, oh, there's this guy back here that's making coffee. They have turned this into a skill set.
Yeah.
They have a whole lexicon around who's making that coffee, who's making that frappe.
And they don't give you numbers. They call your name.
They
They don't
do.
do any of that different stuff. And it's like, wow, I'm a part of the community.
I'm
So
a
when
part
you
of the
hit your hand,
experience.
they
I
call.
belong here. I'm welcomed here.
Yeah, yeah,
This is where I need to be.
yes,
And
yeah,
oh, by the way, I'll get some coffee while I'm here.
right, right. And I'm not even a coffee drinker. I never said that, right? But I'm not. I don't drink coffee. But they have pulled me in.
Wonderful.
And then when we talk about this whole idea of the big change, and we have seen just example after example from, again, small business all the way to international, to where they've had to really think fast on their feet, to talk about how do we shift and navigate from what was and what was our norm. And I agree in regards to we will not go back to what was. So positioning ourselves, whatever industry you are in, to be preferred. I
Be
love
prepared.
that. To be preferred in this new space, this new environment. Then it's a matter of back to that risk. What are we going to risk? But my thing is, it's a risk either way. You're either going to change and try some things, or find yourself paralyzed in what was.
Which is why I'm so excited about the guests that we're going to have here today. Talk
Yes.
about taking on a challenge, talk about being intentional, affirmative, and directive about understanding what your skills, your offerings are, and how to just deliver it differently.
Love it.
That's what we have tonight.
I know. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is a takeover. Fay Fleming is going to take over the second half of the show and lead us into what would be her platform. And I am loving it. The theme being having less struggle and more success. You're going to hear more and more from her and her platform in the days, months to come. But we're going to give it a try. So I'm passing the baton, but I do want to introduce our guests. I believe they are with us now, and Faye is going to take over after the introduction. James, Kristy, are you there?
Yes. Yes, we are. Hello.
When she told me it was you, I was like, oh my God, they should be facilitating this conversation. Talk about power in the pivot and being so ever present at the forefront of entrepreneurship. We could not have selected, Faye, you could not have selected a better couple. And there's so many layers. So I'm hoping you have time to ask them questions, because there's so many lessons within this dynamic couple. Such fans of you both from near and afar. But we have James Jackson II, who is the CEO of Gator MediaSTL. And we have Kristy Jackson, EDS of DK Solutions. And they are, as I mentioned, serial entrepreneurs. They are committed to fulfill their social mission with all of their companies and under the umbrella to service and to investment within the Black and Brown owned businesses to build sustainable communities. Just a little bit about James. He runs this multimedia production company, as I mentioned, Gator MediaSTL. He uses his media company, Gator MediaSTL, to serve as a resource and platform to launch businesses through the Social Synergy Launchpad YouTube series and producing media projects. James has received national recognition for pivoting to provide 900 plus, that's more than 900, close to 1,000 live streaming services to funeral homes and memorial films for grieving families. Talk about the power of the pivot and positioning for big change. On the flip side, the lovely Kristy, she is an author, business coach, facilitator, and I'm going to say an influencer in this region. She is published author of Dream, Sync, Launch, Lessons from a Real Entrepreneurship Journey, the Dream Box children's book, The Biz Paration, and Goal Tracker Journal. All the books that inspire and educate readers to dream big and actively pursue their goals. She is a host of Bizpiration podcast and has been seen and or heard on local and national platforms, including TEDx Women, St. Louis Public Radio, Venture Cafe, and 100 St. Louisans to know, and the list goes on and on. They both have been recognized by Small Business Monthly magazine as the most admired CEOs. And again, to me, one of the most dynamic couples who's making noise in this region. And James and Kristy, they are natives of St. Louis, or at least headquartered here in St. Louis, married for 23 years and has 2 daughters. I usually don't do the personal side, but I had to mention that because people need to understand the journey. So at this point, you know, I'm a little salty, but I'm gonna pass it over to Fay. But I want to bring you guys back, and you all can do a takeover and have the platform. So we'll come back to that.
Okay. Welcome to tonight's segment. And you know what? I'm so glad that she said something about your family, because in your spare time, after doing all this other stuff, you still have a life. And you know, I know when I describe myself, I start out with, I'm a mom. Because along with everything else, you have to do that. So welcome. We're talking about how to maximize change. And ahead of you tonight, we talked about the fact that many people think, oh, it's COVID-19, and we're just waiting. We're holding our breath to get back to normal. However, I would challenge us to think about this as, it's just another big change. And depending upon your age, that could have been the Vietnam War. That could have been women finally getting the opportunity to work, because when the men went to war, they had to come and manufacture and go to the plants. It could have been the Great Depression, right? So I want us to talk tonight to help people to really globally think about, it is just a big change. And if we wait, whether it's good or bad, if you wait a minute, it will change. What we can do is to choose to use this to build skill sets, our creativity, parlay our passions in other directions where we're just maximizing the change until we get to the next one. So will you start us out by just very quickly saying what you were doing before this big change called COVID-19, and then tell us how you intentionally went into the funeral home services?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us, and thanks for sharing this platform with us. We're happy to be here tonight and to share our story and a little bit about how we pivoted during this time. But before the pandemic hit, I ran a full service media firm that offered full service video via promo, commercial. We produced catalogs, internet, content, social media content for companies. And that was through pictures and video. And we knew how to live stream. We knew the virtual space. It was just not as popular at the time. And once the pandemic hit, and we noticed that only 5 to 10 people could be sitting in a room at a time, and hundreds wanted to be in the room, how could we allow them to see what was happening in the room? And that was just something that I sat and came up with. And it started off as, it started off as a small service to just help people, which then turned into a full service business that now it's a popular thing.
Yeah, we actually owned a 2,500 square foot venue space that, you know, in our mind, we wanted it to be a training space where we could facilitate these things, media services and trainings. And, you know, I tell this story, we began to kind of drift away from our original intention and sort of follow the money, right? Which really got us off track, where we had more social events that were happening in that space, as opposed to our original intent was really to develop entrepreneurs and really curate that space more as more of an incubator space for our community. And so we learned, as we were able to walk away from that physical space, as COVID had, you know, sort of unexpectedly forced us to do, we began to find more value in that virtual space. And really, we just had to decide to either pivot or quit, and quitting wasn't an option. So the pivot was the direction that we, you know, decided to go with.
So I want us to be very clear that this is not a situation of you threw your hands up and said, okay, we got this equipment, what else can we do? It sounds like you very strategically looked out into the marketplace and said, what we did before will not work now. Talk to us a little bit about how that strategy was built, how you were able to go out and identify your niche. Because even though we're all going to die, that doesn't really mean that everybody's going to come to you to film it, film the ceremony, right? So give our entrepreneurs, our business people, and even if you're a career professional, the bigger picture we want everyone to walk away with is that it is about holding yourself true to your passions, your talents, your skills, and how to deliver that, whether you're an intrapreneur, an entrepreneur, or a retired person just out still working in the workforce. So walk us a little bit through that, please.
Yeah, so I believe, honestly, it was a moment in our journey where my purpose and my skill set matched up. I believe my purpose was to help and serve and help people reach their full potential. And because that's my purpose here, I was in a space where the full potential was not being met. In the funeral space, because I worked in that business as well, technology was not the primary, that was not the number one thing. Serving the families were. And so if you talked about a virtual memorial film, a slideshow, or any of that, that was like, oh no, we don't need any of that. That's not important right now. The flowers were important. Everything else was important. And the moment people couldn't come into the room, there was an opportunity where I saw that, hey, this is not the end. We can still allow people in the room. They just have to see it. And it started with one call where a guy called me, and I showed up. And I mean, it was just me, the minister, and the deceased in the room. And we had to show the family that was in Texas, California. They were all around the United States. This was at the time no one could travel. This is when the bands first hit, and we had to film it as if the room was full,
right,
and go on. And so from that opportunity, literally at that moment, we only had one computer one camera, one that was set up for live streaming. I mean, I had cameras that could take pictures and film and do all of that. But our live stream setup was literally overnight, me online studying the equipment I needed to buy. I ordered it all in one day, picked it up the next day, stayed up all night, setting up different scenarios and situations, practicing how this would work. And the next day, I literally had maybe 15 calls. The day after that turned into like 30 calls.
Okay, so now that is what I call playing big to a small crowd.
Well, you know, good news travels, right? I mean, you serve in one home and then families will see that service, and then it just grew really by word of mouth. And it just speaks to the power of relationships, really, because he was sort of serving in that space before. You know, James and I have worked in ministry for years. And so, you know, he has either preached at funerals or served at funeral homes. You know, when we were married, probably like 5 years into our marriage, he always said, babe, I want to run a funeral home. And I'm like, what? A funeral home? So this has always sort of been a passion, I guess, sort of maybe a hidden passion of his. So instead of actually running a funeral home, now he's sort of embedded in that funeral home space, which is interesting. But really, it has all grown by word of mouth.
This is what I think follows into the phrase of when due time meets divine order, right?
Yes.
So Kristy, tell us a little bit about, we heard where you came from, how you pivoted to this. Now talk to us a little bit about how are we sustaining this? How are we going, because here's what I think is important. People move from the old to the now, the new, without thinking about what the next is, right? And if you don't do that strategically and fluidly, you will have 3 different kinds of business. So I'm advocating for everyone to think through what you did then needs to translate in a way that your brain can stretch into what you're doing now. And as you put that together, you got to figure out what you're going to do next. So each phase feeds off itself. So talk to us about your next.
Well, I mean, actually, we do realize that, you know, the COVID wave has been that, right? And we know that things will not return to the same as what they were. But, you know, the demand that has been, you know, may not continue. And so, you know, as James has said, originally videography, photography was the focus, and it still is. You know, he's filming and producing television shows. We have a couple out of Atlanta that he's shooting. We're still doing small films here, video production. We're shooting a music video on Saturday. So we still are working and helping entrepreneurs to establish their platforms. We have never actually left that space. It's just that the demand for the live streaming has sort of taken the forefront, but we still have continued to build connections in those entrepreneurship and corporate networks where we are offering production and videography services for that. And that really is the heartbeat, because really just giving entrepreneurs that professional platform to share their stories, promote their stories, and know that they are with a trustworthy company that gets it, that is not just, you know, trying to take a dollar from them, but really committed to offering them professional services, from really listening to what their desire is. What is the goal before we just give them a list of services that we offer? We really are coaching and consulting them through the process that you might think this is what you need, but actually this is what you might consider. And we can fill in those gaps. You know, we've written scripts, we have actors where we can offer voiceovers. So it is just really a blessing to see, you know, some challenges as far as projects that continue to come to allow us to continue to stretch ourselves. He just got a call potentially shooting in London for a project. So, you know, it's continuing to grow and develop, and we're here for the ride.
Wonderful. And thinking about the ride, let's take a ride on a journey called, if I'm a brand new entrepreneur, there are 2 things that I want to come to you that you will say, you're brand new, you just opened up. Here are 2 things that you need to take into consideration that we can help you with?
Mhm.
James, what are those two things?
First thing is, who is your target? Who do you want to reach? And the second thing is, know what you're doing.
Okay, James, I got you, because you know what? I'm going to sell water. Everyone is my target.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
We get that all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's my target.
Yeah.
No,
You
you
know
probably don't understand. The human body is made up of 60% or more of water. So I know everyone needs water.
Yeah.
Everybody needs water, but they might not need our water, the way that we sell and promote that water. So you have to know who your target is. I always say, who is most in need of the services that you're offering?
Yeah.
Everybody can benefit from it, but who is most in need of that? And then, you know, a lot of times I love to start with that why. Like, why now? Why? What is your why behind your business? Because we really are able to extrapolate that into mission, into story, into storytelling to help further develop the brand of their businesses. And a lot of times, you know, they haven't taken the time to really think about that. You know, maybe it's because somebody said, you should start this business. But really, is it your dream? Is it your idea? And so, you know, there have been times that we've, you know, helped entrepreneurs to start, but there have been times that we've saved entrepreneurs from starting too. So, you know, it's not, maybe now is not the best time until you can kind of flesh it out.
Yeah.
But
Right, because we know that unless you have a clear understanding of what you just described, you don't have a business. You have a very expensive hobby.
yes.
So, James, I bumped into Kristy. She took me through all of that. And now I am a thriving business. And I just want to expand. What are the two things that when I come to you and say, in the midst of COVID, I tell you what, we determine how to bring on new niches, new segments. Price is not an issue. We are a provider of preference, but we need to grow. What are the two services and the two issues that you're going to talk to me about now?
I'm going to talk to you about visibility. Who is actually seeing your product? Because I work with several companies that stayed visible during the pandemic. And one thing it did was keep them relevant. And they made more money in the pandemic, record-breaking money, because they stayed visible, telling stories during that time. And then the second thing is to continue to thrive behind the why. Because if you lose track of that vision, if you want to grow, the why has to stay right in front of you. And that allows you to scale with the mission right in front of you and with purpose-driven passion that keeps you motivated to do this every day.
So,
Because-
Kristy, I'm going to let you have the last word on that. And now what I want to do, though, is based upon what James just told me, shouldn't my mission change based upon what the marketplace needs or what they're willing to buy, given the experience that I'm going to give you when you buy my product or service?
Well, you know, I say that there has to be alignment with both. It has to be alignment with what your mission is and what your purpose and your skill sets align with and what the market needs. You know, again, as I said, when we started our business, we followed what the market wanted, which was a space to party, to celebrate, to have weddings, and we did it. But it wasn't our purpose. We were not passionate about it. You know, they say when you love what you do, it doesn't become work. It became work for us. And we were still diligent and we were still professional. But we have to come back to the drawing board because for us,
Kristy, isn't that the whole point of a for-profit business, to make profit?
well, absolutely. But you are more likely to make more profit when you are passionate about the work that you're doing and there is alignment with your mission. See, every customer is not your customer. So your work now begins to find that target that does align with the prices, with your pricing, with the services that you're offering, and even with your mission. So, you know, yeah, I mean, you have to make that decision for yourself.
So, Nikki, I think what we have proved tonight is that there's confusion in the marketplace, because when people hear the dynamic duo, they think of Superman or Batman. I think we can see it differently now.
I mean, I'm like over here sitting on my hands, not wanting to jump in because it's your time. But I just want to applaud both of you for bringing both your skill sets together to intersect, to launch even past what you were doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you were prepared for the opportunity. I just don't want people to miss that because we are wanting so much so fast. And to have our little 5 minutes, we are even like comfortable. Fay and I were talking about that before you joined us. How we'll do anything and we'll adjust, we'll compromise, and then a little bit gets chipped off as to our that why. And I can hear that never left the front of you, even though no matter which arm, which service, which product we're giving, deviating, but we brought it back. You know, I've been to many of those events.
Yes, you have. Yes, you
It's a great time. But I love this. This is honest conversation, and I just applaud you both for modeling such level of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because anyone that hears this segment has got to have less struggle and more success.
And one last thing, where can people find you?
So you can go to my website, www.gatormediastl.com. Yeah, www.gatormediastl.com.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Kristy, tell us about your book before we close.
Sure. So my book really talks about what you're talking about, Fay, having less stress, and it's Dream Sync Launch. Really, it gives you a high level view of the real entrepreneurship journey so that you can anticipate some of those syncs as we did in our journey.
And they can find you where?
DreamSyncLaunch.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
The
So much.
dynamic duo in St. Louis, Missouri.
This was awesome. God bless you guys as he just enlarges your territory.
Thank
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you for
inspiring.
joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take care.
That's here. Bye.
Fay, what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful couple that you've identified to share. And I love the fact that, you know, there's so many dynamics just between the two of them and lessons that can be learned. And then also just inspiration.
Yeah, I hope that people walk away with a couple of things from that part of the segment. Number one, it's doable.
Yes.
It's doable. Number two, stay true to your own, if you want to call it a North Star, if you want to call it where the Spirit leads you, if you want to call it an assignment, if you just want to say, this is what I'm passionate about, stay true to it. But stay strategic, right? You have to at all times understand your competition, market share, products, services, vendors, which brings us to something that I think is really interesting. I was doing a little research, and of course, as a researcher, you expect that, right? And McKinsey and Company, which is a global consulting company started in 1926, really looked at this and said, what COVID is doing for us is that it's making us hone in on stakeholder advocacy. And stakeholder advocacy simply means that we holistically look at operations and we say not only what's good for our stakeholders, but for our other shareholders like employees and vendors and all the other people that are part of, if another way to say it, the ecosystem. And it's not because they're feeling kind or because we've all gone through an emotional change. It is because pragmatically, they found that it increases your bottom line. And I think that's a great nugget.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And a great strategy to not just read about, but to how do you incorporate and embed that to the organization? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much that has come out of this conversation. For you, what would you say is, you know, we always end the segment, even though we've passed the baton, we're passing it back. So
Yes.
have this platform for individuals to learn, like based off of this conversation, what's the one thing in the nick of time that those who are listening need to walk away with? Like one thing you don't want them to miss, and elaborate on that a little bit.
We have now given you an opportunity to be at a decision point, just in the nick of time. And in that decision point, you can choose to be fearful or fearless. You can choose to be cowering, waiting for normal to come back, or you can be confident and powerful to know this is doable and that the same basic business strategies that you use then, you just deploy them differently. But it's the same thing. It's understanding your market, it's understanding the environment, it's understanding the competition. And as our guest said, it's really about knowing what your why is, what your mission is. And another way to say it is you got to know your secret sauce so that people will prefer you. They will delay gratification and they'll say, I'm not having dinner until I hear in the nick of time because I know there's going to be something I can walk away with.
Yes, yes, love it. Now, one last thing in regards to um, when we talk about making sure that we position ourselves for big change
Yes.
in the nick of time. Give us some wisdom.
So, what you want to do is to know it's never about the specific change, right? It's never about is it a depression? Is it cold? It is about what is my opportunity here to be able to see change from afar, to already have some skills around change, and to get on that wave to maximize the change. That's the power. That's the power and the opportunity we all walk away with to get to that intersection of making that decision and being more powerful than before the wave hit.
Hmm. That's wonderful.
And you can do it in the nick of time.
Love it, love it. Now, you are doing lots of work behind the scenes, but also in front of the scenes. And this tonight is just one of those steps. Big change,
Big change.
big change in regards to you moving from behind the scenes to allow individuals who you probably in some instances would not cross paths with because you are so behind the scene in making companies shine and reposition themselves, but now being forward and community public facing in this capacity moving forward. What can we look forward to?
What you can look forward to is that we're going to be talking about real issues with real solutions that work, right? It won't be, this is what I heard, this is what I read. It will be, no, I know this to be true. I know this to be true. And if you will follow along this critical pathway, we will get together to the other side. So at this point, I'd like to give a shout out to the SBA right here in St. Louis. I am working with a team of really smart people to deliver the Emerging Leaders Program, where we have 20 businesses that we're going to take through a 6 months process where I'll be facilitating and coaching them. And at the end, they will walk away with a growth plan that hopefully will double their business in 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Those are the kinds of opportunities where we can come together as lifelong learners, because as much as I'm going to give them, we're going to, as a group, create our own cohort. And we're going to all move forward and we will all be better. And the GDP nationally and locally will be better because we will be stronger businesses. We will expand, we'll hire people, and it's a win-win.
Yeah,
It's a
and
trifecta of good news.
right, and big change.
Yes, it is.
Because even with the footprint that we have now, as James and Kristy mentioned, pivoting to do what they were doing using technology, we
Right.
understand that's not going to change. So I know that the tools and the resources that you will share will give them this whole new mindset that, while you may be headquartered in one region, your footprint for impact is the world. I mean, you have the whole globe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Because you know what? I'm one of those businesses. The business performance company, we lost 60% of our national clientele in the first 30 days of COVID. So we face to face, from keynote speaking face to face, from building strategy for businesses face to face, to this is our face to face. This is our new channel.
yes. And you know,
So
there's
again, when we appear and say, in the nick of time, let me tell you, this is how this really works. It is not. It's because we're living it, and we're maximizing change as we then share it and teach it to others.
yes, this is wonderful. I am just so honored that we could collaborate in such a way. Um, this is big change in itself to where we're trying something new, and it feels real good. It
Well,
feels
thank you.
yes, no, thank you.
I am so excited about partnering and collaborating with you because it all started with your decision to share your knowledge and to share your space.
Yeah, and
And
like
for that, I remain humble and grateful.
no, likewise. I mean, you have so much knowledge, expertise, grace. So I'm like, no, people need to hear this. People need to experience this. And I thank you for being available, willing, and ready to share and to show up. So thank you. Those who want to know more about Fay Fleming and the company, Business Performance Company, you can go and visit them at biz, performanceco.com. We will also post this to make sure that you have access to that information. Do not think this is your last time seeing Fay Fleming. She will be back in the place. We're gonna try this some more times because guess what? You will be able to hear her for a whole 30 minutes or for a whole hour. And I cannot wait because I will be tuned in as a student as well. Lady Fay, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to help other people struggle less and succeed more.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving us your head, your heart, and now we've given you something to place in your hand. We want you to go out and realize that you have everything you need to be successful, and that's success as you define it. So go, be good, be great, and continue to make a difference and be the difference you want to see in the world. Don't forget, we want to thank Sparkman Pathway to Careers and KSTL 690 AM and Covenant Exchange LLC for their support. Don't forget, till next time, be blessed.